So, I realized it's been about a month since I've done a video, and I thought, what could we do that's relatively quick, that's something everybody can use? And I decided lava was something pretty useful. So this is a pretty simple lava. It shouldn't take more than one or two videos to make. And, it's got a bit of an animation. It doesn't move around as much as water does, but, enough to give it a little bit of zing. And it's been made. We're only really using two channels here. We're using, made an emissive channel and then the height. And that's pretty much it. And the whole thing is actually constructed um, using a bunch of black and white maps. And at the end, we plug it into a gradient node. So without any much ado, let's start making one of these. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new substance, and let's call it lava. And again, it's PBR relative to parent. Now, before we actually, since we know we're only going to use two channels, we may as well take care of that first. The other thing we're going to also do is we're going to add an output node, and we're going to make an emissive channel. Where's my label? And then we'll go down here, add item, and we set that to emissive. So I'll go ahead and put that up here. I'm also going to switch this around because I like my height near my normal. It seems to make more sense to me. Okay, so the color, the base color, we really don't need anything in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in this black. I'm also going to make it smaller because we don't need a full, it's just a flat color. And I'm also going to put this into the metallic channel. Then for our normal, I have saved in my favorites library a thing called normal color, which I'm going to plug in here. And again, I'm going to set this down to a smaller size. Height we're going to use, and then roughness. With the normal and the roughness, I kind of fooled around actually making maps for both of them, and because this is not really using color and it's using emissive, this stuff for the most part really gets lost in the emissiveness. So I decided I'm really not going to address those at all because it's kind of a waste. So again, I'm going to switch this to grayscale. We'll maybe not make it completely white, but we're going to make it pretty rough. And so that's that stuff squared away. And now what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to deal with, let's go back to my original, is we're going to use a splatter node to create basically islands, because we have here this two basic areas. We have, so it's kind of like, when I did the land with the water, you've got this flowy magma, liquid hot magma, and then you've got the more crusty areas. So we've got basically two things. So you can think of this as the land and you can think of this as the water. So much like we did with the actual land and water, we're going to use the same idea. We're going to make a shape and then we're going to put it through splatter. And then in the splatter, I decided to leave it static. This is just, I'm using these for my notes. But the nice thing about that is that you can actually do a bunch of things in here, and if you choose to expose them, you can. And again, I've planned this material, I've planned this material trying to get this guy as close. I mean, it's actually almost at the end of the chain here. I mean, I may have, you can physically set it back all you want, but you want is because if you're going to start exposing parameters in here, you don't every time you've got a variable, every time it runs the process. So I don't know what it is, every millisecond, whatever. It's got to look up that variable. So if you have it back here, that's a lot of extra calculating it's got to do. So whenever you have something that's got a lot of variability to it, you try as much as you can to get it up towards the end. So these are all constants, so it does a bunch of constants first and then it hits the variables last. Okay, where were we? So we're going to start doing this section first because this section will represent our quote-unquote water area, our lava. And then we're going to deal with this section next, which is going to deal with the crusty quote-unquote land areas. All right, so let's get back to here and let's start. Right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get ourselves a shape. So I look in my library and I get a shape node. And I have this set to, I believe it's called pyramid. And then I don't want it quite so big because I want some more space in the edges. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to set this scale to something, something like that. Now the other thing you can also do, we're going to keep it square, but you can really manipulate this shape and you can change its angle. So, there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. Right. The next thing we need to do, we're going to actually use a directional warp. And then we need something to warp it against. So I'm going to put that in there. And then what I used was, I believe, Perlin Zoom. Perlin Noise Zoom. Now, for both of these, well, actually, yeah, I will. I know, I was fooling around with, I lowered these down. I think I brought them back up again. I had them down to 128, but it seems to work fine at 256. Again, I was thinking that it's kind of nice to have bits of it a bit more mushy. So again, you can play with the resolutions. Let's take a look at the directional warp. Now, we want this intensity way up because now what we're trying to do, this square diamond shape isn't really, or pyramid, whatever it's called, isn't really look like anything associated with lava. And then as we bring this up, you see, now we've got these pretty much rippled up edges. It's starting to look much less like a square. It is kind of driving it up into that corner. It's not centered anymore, but that doesn't matter because we're going to fix that in a minute. So that's a good start. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in a transform node. Now with the transform node you can do very specific width and height by percentage. So for example, we could make this 125 by width and leave the height alone, and we could apply width and it would do that. So it very, very specifically does that. Or you can do it by hand. And I kind of want to show you this also. Now, we don't want this to tile because we're looking to get one single shape, and we don't want that to happen. So what we need to do is we need to go into tiling mode. Currently, it's set relative to input. We're going to set it as absolute, and then we're going to, this becomes available to us. So if it's relative to input, it's, whatever's coming in through the input, as that would imply. If we set it to absolute, we kind of can make that independent, and we're going to set it to no tiling. So all of a sudden, I'm now only just dealing with this little guy. So now I can, I'm free to move him around without having to worry about any of that other stuff happening. So, it's still looking a little bit square to my taste, so we're just going to give it a little bit extra, I guess, randomization. I'm going to get another transform node, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do something else to it. Well, let's put this blend mode in here first so we can see what we're doing. And we're going to set that to lighten. So now we have one on top of the other. Now we can go back to this one. Actually, let's double click on this. We'll single click on this. And now it'll show me my results. So we can get it to, look a little bit more not square. Let's maybe move. So trying to get it a little bit more centered. I think I'm going to do that, make it completely. There, okay. Again, we can always come back to it if we're not happy. I tend to get sort of stuck on those things. Right. Now, I'm also going to, next I'm going to put in here is a levels node, which will allow me to sort of make that a little bit, well, first of all, let's move this back. I'm going to be using this as a mask. So I want to be able to get this sort of a bit more exposed. I don't want to get it I'm going to have the level, the edges bleed a little bit, but I sort of want more in the middle there. So I'm going to do that. And again, we can always come back to that and set it how we want it. And then, just because I know I'm going to need it, because I didn't originally put it in here, we're going to be combining two things into one shape. And it just helps to have this here because I ended up having to make it smaller because we're actually going to be fitting this on top of a larger shape. So now that we got our shape here, I mean, we could do it in here if we needed to really save a node, but it's just easier to deal with, and I don't think we're that hard up. So we can leave that like that for now. So that's our basic blob of liquid magma. So that's these things right in here. The next thing we're going to deal with are these sort of veiny things that kind of come out the edges. And again, that's all going to be part of this basic shape, which we're going to splatter. And so we're going to come back up here, and we're going to start a brand new sort of little thing. And for this one, I believe it's called cells 1, yes. And I had it set to, I think I had it set to 15. So I'm just gonna, so I upped it just a little bit. And then I got a warp, and I warped it against itself. Let's get a bit closer in on that. And as you start doing that, you get this cool sort of crack pattern. Now we're going to want it. We're going to want it with the crackly bits white. So I'm just going to go ahead right now and put an invert grayscale in here. And then we're going to get a levels, and we're going to sort of ramp all of this up. So we've got our basic pattern. Now we're going to So to amplify it in here. I hope. Yeah, this is. What did I do right? That doesn't look right. I think this is probably off. There we go. That's the ticket. Okay. So you're getting like, you know, so these are like these crackly things, cracks. And then let's put a little bit of a blur in here because that's a little sharp. So we'll just really make it low. Like points, let's do 0.75. It's not quite 1. Right. Now, yeah. We're ready to blend these two together. If we do it right now, and then we blend it with a lighten, we're starting to get what we want. However, if we go ahead and put this, let's get a splatter node. If we set this up the way it is right now, so let's come down into our splatter node. We're going to need, let's set this down to, I don't know, 3 for now. Disorder, we absolutely want random. Disorder angle, let's bring that up there, and then disorder, here we go. You can see what's going on here, where we're beginning to see the squares of the of those cracks. So what we need to have happen, let's finish this up while we're at it. What we really need to set is, well, first of all, rotation variation and rotation. So let them, you know, rotate randomly. And then finally, I'm looking for size variation right here. So you can go really high with that, and I think for here we're going to go like 300. Let's see what happens with 300, and this way you get some very big ones and some very little ones. In fact, we could probably go higher than that. And I think that makes it more interesting. But you'll notice that what is happening is that you can see the edges of that square. So that's an easy problem to take care of. And all we need to do is in here between these two is make a second larger mask. So we can just take that same one and we're just going to make it bigger. And we want it to more or less fill up. I mean, we want to take up as much real estate as we can. I also don't want it exactly in the same position because that would look stupid. You know, and I can stretch it and fit it into where I want. And I just don't want it to actually come up to the edges. And I'll use this as a mask for this, and then I'll run it into here. And now, come on, when we do the splatter, we don't have those square edges anymore. I'm not happy with what's going on here yet because it's not looking, I want some more yeah, so it's really high. And no, I think I like 3. And then maybe we can, and again, you can do these two independently of each other. They don't have to be square. So it gives you a lot of variation in what you can do with the shape that you run through your splatter. So I think that looks pretty good. So we're getting those veiny things happening. And maybe I'm going to bring this down a little bit, because I do want some black areas in the middle there, because we have other plans for those. And maybe bring this up a bit. Anyway, you know, you can fool around with it, get how you want. So you've got a lot of variety. Okay, I'm going to stop now. All right, okay. So that's our basic to, you know, the landmass and the lava, if you will. So I think this is a good time to start looking at our gradient map. So let me get set up, and we're going to go into Google and find ourselves some lava. Yeah, this is a gigantic pain in the butt without two screens. Right, so I liked this one. I just did a search for lava flow, and I think that's like actually the first picture that came up. But I like that purple in there. So I'm right-clicking here, and I'm going to add node, where are we? Gradient map. So I've clicked on my gradient map. I'm going to my gradient editor, and then I go to pick gradient. And now I sort of want to catch these colors right there. And we can go ahead and get back into here. So this is way more colors than I need, and I actually want these a little bit different. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this all the way down, the precision down to nothing, because the more points you have, let's take a look. The more points you have, the kind of stripier it'll get, because each one of those points corresponds. This starts at black. Imagine this as being black, and it goes all the way up to white. So all those hundreds of grayscale points in between are represented by a color here. So you're really painting by assigning to this grayscale that you're feeding into your gradient map. Each individual point of gray in between black and white in here can be assigned a color. So the more points you have, the more busy it gets, and you can, come on. Oh, I guess once you've done it, the precision's set. Okay, that's good. I didn't want it too high. So anyway, but if you have a whole bunch of points in here, you kind of start getting these stripy areas, because you're getting very, very specific with the colors that you're assigning to a particular gray. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, right now, will that do it? No, that's gonna, okay. Right now, this is exactly backwards. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of a bunch of points. I'm going to pick out the colors that I like in here, and I'm going to get rid of everything else. I think I'm going to get rid of these guys. I'm getting rid of these guys. And this one, I'm going to go much darker. Now, actually, I think I like the other purple better. I think I want this one. Yeah. go with that one. So we'll get rid of these guys. Delete. Get rid of these guys. Bring this one all the way down here. Like this. Yeah, I spent a great deal of time experimenting with these colors. You can really spend a lot of time doing this because depending on what you're making, each little point can become something to totally stress over. But we're going to keep it really simple because we don't want a lot of those lines. We want it kind of going vaguely from lighter to darker because with magma, the way it goes is that the hottest is up here and then the coolest is down here. So we're kind of emulating that. Now this purple is still too purple, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this point here, and it's going to give me a point at that point, whatever the color is at that point, and then I'm free to move that point around. So it's a great way to sort of pick up new colors and move them around, because you can, like, I like this mix, so I can go like this, and then I can move it up here, and I can do all kinds of stuff with it. But I don't really need that, so I'm going to delete it. What I'm making here is a bracket. I want to get this bottom one here. This is going to be pure black, because remember, we're making it on an emissive, so I want a little bit. So I want a little bit to be completely non-emissive, but only just a little bit. And then I'm going to find, maybe not this pure black, but I'm going to find a very dark purple here. And I'm going to make that a bracket so that I'm going to have, I know, an area that's not going to fade. It's just going to be this kind of dark spot. And now I can move this up and see how it begins to affect my edges. So I do kind of like it there, I think. So this is starting to look a little bit more like lava. This, I think, could probably go darker. But again, now that we don't have a bajillion points, it becomes a lot more manageable. So I'm going to close this out for now. And let's publish this out. And I think we are going to split this up into 2 videos. Let's publish this out and see what it looks like right now. So let's save this. So Control S. So we're going to save it as lava. And then let's come in here and take this new material. You know what? I think that's the old lava I made. I made another one that I didn't like. Let me pause this, get back if this isn't the material we just made. Yeah, I really need to take a weekend off. We forgot to publish this out. So why don't we do that first before we get worried that we've got the wrong thing going on in there. I'm very tired. Okay, let's take a look. That's more like it. There we go. So while we're in here, let's set up our material. First of all, let's have it stop playing. And let's redo this whole thing. And let's turn on our emissive, because remember, there's nothing on the color channel. And then the other thing we need to do is, well, I guess there's, oh yeah, we need to set up the tessellated shader. So I like Uber, but again, whatever you use is fine. And we're going to switch to tessellation. And I think I want this at 0.2. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell right now because we don't really have anything set in there. But those are the settings I usually use. So I'm just going to put them in there so we don't have to worry about it anymore. So there we go. We have the beginnings of our lava. It's not animated yet, but you know, we're getting the basic shoreline. It's still very low res. We can, I don't know. I kind of like a mushy. So I was like fooling around with it at 512. I kind of liked it. But we might want to go higher than that. And again, we can decide that later. So I'm gonna end this video here, and then we're going to finish it up in the next one. But we're pretty much more than halfway there, I think.